the channel and welcome to the hangar. I want to talk a little bit about getting back into flying. Spring's coming, hopefully, fingers crossed. We're looking forward to getting out there in some warmer weather, and I thought I'd make a bit of a video today on getting back into flying after it's been a while since you did so. I'm talking a couple months. So that's going to be the main focus, just to go over a couple of points, sort of a checklist to help you get back into flying after a bit of an absence. But I think this would be useful for everybody because sometimes we just don't think about these things, or we can get going and everything becomes sort of automatic, and maybe it's time we actually did check off a couple of these items and made sure we had everything that we needed to do. So obviously, if we haven't flown in quite a while, we might want to check some documents to start with, kind of really planning to get back into flying here. Let's take a look at our medical. When's it due? Do I need to book an appointment? Do I need to get that done? That's been trickier with the COVID situation, so maybe planning that ahead of time and not ending up in a situation where you lose your medical because you can't get an appointment or the wait times are really great. So I know that's something that's really easy to slip the mind. So thinking right there, taking a look at your document booklet, checking your license, checking your validity periods on your IFR and on your actual medical itself. Aircraft documents as well. I mean, when was the last time you reviewed and made sure you had everything that you needed for the flight? Journey book, certificate of registration, certificate of airworthiness, insurance, so on and so forth. So I think you want to make a bit of a checklist, starting with some really basic items that we maybe don't necessarily think of before every flight, even though we should, and work your way through those, especially if you have been away from the airplane for a little while, because you want to make it really nice and simple, and we don't want any incidents or accidents or scaring ourselves in the aircraft. So look at your medical, look at your license, and see what the status there is. Now, if we've been away from the airplane for a while, hopefully your airplane will have a pilot operating handbook, and hopefully you've read it at some point. And if you haven't, or if it's been a while, maybe it's a really great opportunity to dig back into that pilot operating handbook. We want to review things like speeds, climb speed, VX, VY, maneuvering speed, best glide speed. We want to have a good look at emergencies. You know, when was the last time you practiced a forced approach? I got a video for forced approaches, so I'll put that link below. You can check that out. Maybe that'll be helpful, and maybe it's time to get out and practice a forced approach from the downwind to the runway or out in the practice area to a farmer's field. Reading the POH, maybe coupling that with a few other training items like the flight training manual would be a really great asset to get your mind back into the flying and to make sure that you're prepared. So speeds, emergencies, weight and balance. Let's have a review of weight and balance. Some airplanes it's really simple, very straightforward. Other aircraft can get a little more complex. So let's make sure we're comfortable with those ahead of time. Now with speeds, with POH, with checklists, when was the last time you did a check flight? Has it been 10 years or 15 years since you went with an instructor? Just going with any instructor is not much good. You really want someone who's proficient, good at flying the airplane, and can assist you and aid you in your flying. Depending on your area and depending on the aircraft you may have, you may not find an instructor with those skills, so you might be looking at just a more qualified, competent pilot who has flown the aircraft more recently or has a lot more experience on it. It might be worthwhile setting up going and flying with someone a lot more experienced. You just need to be careful about any implications that might have on who's flying the airplane, what are we doing in the actual event of an emergency, you know, are we actually providing instruction here, or is this just sort of a review flight, and is there any insurance implications along there? So obviously, you know, a lot of stuff like CFS now is all going to be digital, and a lot of us have got electronic flight bags, so we can get all of our maps, charts, publications in there. Let's have a review of those. Let's have a look at the Aeronautical Information Manual and review some airspace and radio procedures, because these are things that I certainly see flying regularly that are becoming very poorly done by a lot of pilots. Not joining the circuits correctly, not overflying airports at the correct altitude. These are really basic things that we shouldn't be getting wrong. So if you've been away from flying, and you want to get back in, let's start with some real basic long game stuff. When's my medical due? When's my aircraft annual due? What's the status around that? And then build yourself back in by reviewing your documents, reviewing your operating handbook, taking a look at some emergencies, and deciding or not whether you should have a flight with an instructor or a more qualified person. So hopefully that's something you thought about, but if not, I think it'll really help. Next, you want to pick a good day. Don't get yourself rushed. Don't have something else to do that day. Don't go on a day where the weather is bad or the winds are really high if you haven't been in a while. Start with the simple things. Walk, then run. Start with a nice day, then you can go on windier days or worse weather days and build your confidence back up in a slow and safe manner. But push yourself. You always want to push yourself to go somewhere new, go to a new airport, experience different runways, different traffic patterns, controlled airspace. But you've got to do the studying, you've got to do the research ahead of time to make sure you're prepared. Now, next, what we should look at is, if you haven't been flying for a while and you own your own airplane, getting your aircraft out of storage. You didn't have your aircraft in storage? That's interesting. Anytime it's sitting for a long period of time, like plus 30 days, we want to be thinking about putting some items in place to protect that aircraft. Batteries, fuel systems, engine. Okay, so if you haven't put it into storage and it's been a few months, something to consider for next time. But in any case, we'll take a look around the airplane here and look at what we would do to bring it back into flying service, which is basically just an extensive walk around. But it might need to be, we come down the day beforehand and check tire pressures, boost the battery, or trickle charge it if it's necessary, and just kind of, again, familiarizing ourselves with the airplane, with flying, and getting our mind back into a good headspace so that we don't rush, we don't make mistakes, we don't scare ourselves. And that's the other thing, we're not taking passengers if we haven't flown in a while, okay? And there's regulations even on what our passenger carrying rules are. So that's what we're going to look at. So we'll take a good look around the airport, and I'll point out a couple of items that could maybe get missed if we haven't gone in a while. We'll start with our nice extensive walk around. If you haven't done one for a while, again, your operating handbook, obviously this is not the one for this airplane, but it's just an example for you, has a nice way to do a pre-flight, start, endpoint. If in doubt, just follow it, follow through your checklist, and get everything done. Great way to make sure you're doing what you need to. Overall condition of the airplane, if you've been away from it a while. Has it been damaged? Has anything bumped into it? Antenna security. Okay, struts. And these type of flying wires always like to ping and make sure the tone is right. Okay, we're looking at hinges. Checking lubrication. All right, tire. Pressure, obviously an important one. Tread. Is there sufficient tire and tread left? Okay, we've got full motion on the control surface without any binding or grinding or anything getting in the way. It's amazing the animals and rodents that can get into an aircraft, or the damage that can be done, especially if you're sharing hangar space with someone else. And I've fixed lots of those before for people. So that's what you're looking for if you've been away from the aircraft for a long time and it's been in storage. All right, look at that. Got a screw not done up all the way. Okay, screws will rattle out in flight, and that may be something that was missed from a little while ago, or some maintenance was done and it wasn't done up all the way. Checking bolts, hardware, attaching point, hinges. This is nothing special right now. This is just a walk around. Again, the key is you're taking your time. You're not got a meeting, right afterwards, or family picnic or something like that. You don't want to be rushed when you're doing this, especially if you haven't been at it for a while. You're going to just, slowly paint yourself into a corner, and then that's how you end up wrecking it. So don't have bad weather approaching and you're trying to get out ahead of it. You might even come down and do this really thoroughly the day before you go flying. Just getting your head
back into the flying. Don't ever blow directly into a pitot tube, okay? If you're in doubt that it's not functioning properly, you have someone blow by it, not on it, but near it, while someone else watches the airspeed indicator. Or set your phone up in the cockpit with a camera running so it can see it if you're on your out. All right. Now, here's a great one. Wheel pants, wheel spats, whatever you want to call them. Plane shoes, I think my wife calls them. They really hide tires. These ones aren't too terrible, but cuts, nicks, and inflation can be very hard to determine correctly with them installed. So if you haven't flown in a while, it's probably a good idea to check those tire pressures with an actual gauge, and you may need to take the wheel pant off to do so. All right. Cowling, open it up as best you can. We may need to put a trickle charge on the battery to top it up, especially if you've got any electronic clocks or digital clocks that run off of battery power and it's been a few months. That battery could be very discharged. So save yourself some stress and aggravation, get it boosted the day before. Checking hoses, clamps, connections, magnetos, P-leads. It's, again, just a walk around. We're going to check oil quantity. Do we need an oil change? You know, what's the status there? Looking at plugs to make sure they're tight. We've got all of our nuts on. Gaskets are good. You know, nothing's missing. Nothing's broken. Nothing's living or moved in. Belt tension. Okay, these are all good things we can check. Landing gear as we go by. Exhaust. Okay. Don't forget to check the quantity of fuel. I mean, good heavens, that one is easily missed, especially if you're distracted. And that's the big one. We're creatures of habit, and there's nothing like someone showing up in the middle of your walk around to distract you, especially if you haven't done one in a while. Yeah, I think we need fuel before we go anywhere in this one. Gallons, not exactly a lot. So we'll make sure we got sufficient fuel for the flight, taking into consideration any delays you might have or unexpected occurrences, like the airport gets closed because somebody has an accident because they rushed and got themselves into trouble. You make sure you got enough fuel to get to the next nearest airport, or enough fuel to do a couple of overshoots yourself if it's going to take more than one to get back. You don't need to be stressing out about fuel. If you have an aluminum propeller, careful about dragging your hand down the leading edge. If you've got any sharp nicks or burrs in there, you could really hurt yourself. I would open up the other side of the cowling and check it out, because why not? We haven't gone in a while. I won't do that right now, so don't make the video too long, but that would be something to check. Okay, again, bolts. We'll be having a really close look around the brake, any hydraulic fluid, any oil leakage, fuel samples, right? Definitely want to be checking those fuel samples. Okay, perfect. Is that absolutely 100% water or 100% fuel? Kind of hard to tell in this test tube. It's a little discolored, it's a little old. The nose gives it away, okay? But I could fill that up with water and it would look the same. So I've seen that a number of times, where people take a sample, it looks nice and clear like that, but it's all water. So you really do want to smell it and double check, especially if it's been a while and the aircraft hasn't been full of fuel. If the temperature's been fluctuating a lot, it could have been building condensation. I'll put a picture up of a couple that have come out with water in them, and it normally takes quite a few checks before you get it. We would check the rest of this side here and back to where we started. Okay, I hope you found that a helpful video. The idea was not to do a walk around, and there's different ways to do walk arounds, but really just make sure you're getting all the items listed in the operating handbook. You're doing it before each flight, and you're doing it, I think, for best results the same way each time so that it's consistent. Try and make sure you don't get distracted while doing the walk around, and try and make sure that you really are looking and not just skimming over things. I really hope 2022 is going to be a better year for all of us for flying. Maybe a few less travel restrictions will help us all get out there and enjoy general aviation a lot more.
If you've been away for a while because of that or because of the weather over the winter time, I really do think it's a great idea to give yourself a checklist and work through it, right from when's the maintenance due on the plane, when's the medical due for me, and then reviewing your operating procedures, your handbook, your emergency procedures, your airspeeds, really going through the aircraft in some detail if it hasn't flown in a while, and then getting back into the air in a really calm, relaxed way. There's nothing like having lots of time and being relaxed to really enjoy what you're getting back into. Hopefully you can find some new adventures in aviation this year. Maybe a float rating, or getting a tail checkout, maybe adding a new airplane type, or maybe doing some aerobatics. Keep pushing the boundaries, keep getting out there and flying, and remember, you got to keep studying and practicing these things. We'd love to hear your comments. We'd love to hear from you on other videos you might like to see, maybe how to fly precautionary approach or something like that. And get flying, get out there, stay safe. Happy tailwinds, everyone.